Think you know a person? Let's delve a little deeper. This is Who the Hell with Al Dobie and Al Shield.
This week, Al, a person who, well, we want to know more about. Who the hell is Scott Hargraves?
A massive person of interest in our own world, Al, because Scott is involved in that wonderful world that you and I consume, being beer.
Well, I think as summer has hit us, beer is really important in everyone's... And doing it responsibly. Just got to make sure we get that out there. But it's a brewery called Balter, and the story behind Balter is interesting itself. But Scott joins us now for Who the Hell. And Scott, take us back to the very start where you were living in Canberra. What were you doing?
G'day, fellas. Thanks for having me. Yeah, I was a concrete contractor. I had my own concrete business with my wife, plugging away, making concrete, driving a Bobcat, doing the do. Around about sort of 2000 or so, around about the start of the new century, I started to wander a bit. Like I'd always been I'd been playing in bands and stuff, so I'd used to drink Melbourne tinnies, basically. Have them lined up across the Marshall when we're doing gigs or rehearsing or whatever. But I started to explore different flavours and different types of beers, and it was very early on in the piece. So the Little Creatures Pale Ale had just come out, and I think it was still called Little Creatures Live then, and Chuck Hahn's the Malt Shovel James Squire range had only just started to come out, the very first of those beers. And I was trying all these beers and then palming them off to my mates and, sort of slapping another industrial lager junk they had in their hands. And, here, try this, and just generally pestering people.
Yeah.
So that's when the bug bit. When you discovered this alternate world to what you've been drinking.
Yeah.
What got you to the point where you said, look, I've been concreting for quite some time now. I want to try something different.
Yeah, well, I had, I think it was around March 2006, I went to an adult education course at the Wigan Pen in Canberra. So very in Australian craft beer circles, very, much loved and well-known brew pub, basically, right in the middle of Canberra. And the guy who owned the place was doing this half-day adult education course on the history of brewing. So he got a couple of kilos of barley malt and wheat malt and put them together in a lunchbox esky, basically, and boiled a jug and put some hot water in it and said, this is a mash. This is how the beginnings of start
beer,
brewing. Yeah. As soon as I actually smelt that mash, something changed in my brain chemistry. That was it. I'd never had anything to do with brewing, apart from one or two attempts at a Cooper's kit, with the goo. But proper all-grain brewing I knew nothing about and hadn't been anywhere near it. But as soon as I smelt that mash, then it was so primal, so familiar as well. And it was almost like, I've said it a few times, it's almost like I smelt those aromas and just went, I'm home. Like there was something about it. And I didn't know anything still at that stage.
So you started brewing in your own home?
Yep. So Lockie McComish, the guy who owned the Wigan Pen at the time, I said, so during this course, everyone else had left and I'm still bugging Lockie at the bar several hours later, and he's going, here, try this beer. This is from Germany. Try this beer. This one's made with this yeast and this malt and blah, 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 blah. And I said, so can you be a brewer if you're not a chemical engineer or some sort of food scientist? He said, yeah, of course you can if you're passionate enough and you're good enough and and you stick at it, of course you can. He goes, and get your home brewing in order. And there was a Canberra Brewers poster on the wall for a local home brew club. And I didn't tell him that I hadn't done any home brewing yet.
Yeah.
I just went, yeah.
Okay, I'm on to that.
I'll keep going. Yeah. So then I went and I joined the Canberra Brewers Club and got to meet some people there and got hand-me-down equipment, as you do, and started making beer and then making better and better beer and then starting to win medals and awards and a national title for a wheat beer and all that sort of stuff.
One thing I'm really curious about, Scotty, one of the beers that you did make, and this is going back, I think, 15 years ago now, a beer inspired by Angus Young's Rosewood guitar. Please take us back. You wanted to brew a beer with the same colour as this guitar.
Yeah, that's true, actually.
That is very cool.
It was a copy of... I was trying to get the same colour as one of Angus Young's 64 SGs, I think it was, because I was still have lots of musical equipment. I've got a couple of Les Pauls and bits and pieces, and I thought, just in my journey, wouldn't it be cool if I could make make a beer that is the same colour as that sort of burgundy colour of that guitar? Yeah. And I did. And I actually thought, bugger it, I don't care if the beer's any good. I'll tip it out. But if I get the colour, right, I'll be happy. So I brewed the beer. It was a Munich Dunkel, which is a sort of malty, sort of darker amber to darker coloured sort of German lager, basically, and stuck it in the Canberra Brewers comp, and it won a won a gold medal, I think. So
That's unreal.
It turned out to be pretty handy beer.
Does Angus Young know about this?
I doubt it.
I was going to ask, has he tried it? You haven't sent him any of the brew, or
No.
didn't last that long?
No, the only claim to fame there was I brewed one of my wheat beers was called Wise Blood, which is named after a Corrosion of Conformity album. I don't know if you know those guys. They're sort of southern metal from in the US, sort of, Black Sabbath inspired.
Wow.
Sort of vibes.
Yeah. Yep.
And Pepper Keenan, the lead singer and guitarist, was playing in another band called Down. And as I'd left Canberra and started to work on the sunny coast, there was a Down concert in Brisbane. And I actually got to meet Pepper and tell him that, hey, I named a beer after your album and it just won the national titles.
That's
And
so...
I was like, well, you got to get me a bottle. I own a bar in New Orleans.
So do they serve that brew there now?
No.
No.
We're talking with Scott Hargraves, who's the head brewer of Balter Brewing, which is a craft brewery on the Gold Coast. Now, when did it become a job for you when you were getting paid to brew beer?
September 1, 2008, which I worked out was about 23 months after that first all-grain beer that I made myself in my garage.
Wow.
So it was pretty quick. Like, when I'd sort of decided, wow, I wonder if I could actually make a job out of this. I'd come home from the wig and pan, and the next morning I'm lying in bed going, do I even dare to dream that I could actually do this for a living? And I sort of didn't go there. But I just, I started the home brewing thing and just got better and better. And for me, it was about trying to hone my skills that I would actually be, a candidate for a brewing job, to get myself to that scale, to that sort of proficiency. And luckily enough, that's what happened. I'd seen this ad for the Sunshine Coast brewery job, and at the time, most of the new craft breweries in Australia were sort of popping up around in Victoria and particularly in Melbourne. I was sort of always looking south, saying to my wife, if I get good enough at this and we have to be brave enough to take one of these jobs if I actually get offered one. Because she was wanting to get me out of concrete. And so
Leap of faith stuff.
Yeah, I'm looking south from Canberra down towards, thinking, Canberra was drought bitten at the time. I thought it's going to be even drier where we're probably headed. And I saw an ad for the Sunshine Coast, and I'll be quite honest, I had to Google it and find out where it was. I thought it was actually just north of here. I thought you had Gold Coast, Sunshine Coast, Brisbane.
Yeah.
Sorry about that, everybody up there. So I said to my wife, wow, that's 1,500 k's away. Logistically, that's just no-go. That's just silly. And she's turned around and goes, yeah, no, you ring him tomorrow.
Wow.
So the next morning, I'm in my Bobcat digging out another driveway, and I started getting these texts from my wife. Have you rung those guys yet? Have you rung those guys yet? Have you rung those guys yet? And I'm like, nope. Digging away, nope.
Leave me alone.
And the last one that afternoon, was about the 20th one. It was, don't effing come home until you've rung those guys. So my wife basically bullied me into it.
You've got to do what a wife says.
Yeah. And I love her for it.
And
a
now,
lot of other people do too.
Now look where you are. I mean, look, currently, Scotty, you're sitting here in the studio, a Balter t-shirt, a Balter hat. Did you ever envisage you get to the point where you even had your own clothing for this?
Yeah.
No, not really. You just never know, I suppose.
Right, Sunshine Coast for how long?
Almost exactly a year. I got up there and spent a year sort of learning the ropes, I suppose, as a brewer. Was I actually good enough to do this commercially? Because you sort of wonder while you're there going, am I a fraud? Blah, blah, blah. And luckily enough, I won the Champion Reduced Alcohol category at the Australian International Beer Awards about 6 months in. And another one of my dark wheat beers won a gold medal. So I sort of thought, I mightn't be too bad at this. Concrete may well be in the rear vision mirror for good now.
Yeah.
And bang on about a year into that job, I got asked to be Stone & Wood's first full-time employee. So I went and did that for 4 years. So
That's amazing, because Stone & Wood in the craft brewing world is an iconic brand of beer.
Oh, yeah, and legends. They're great guys.
And Byron Bay based.
Yep.
So from Sunshine Coast down to Byron Bay, similar kind of lifestyle?
Yeah, back to New South Wales. I'm a New South Wales boy, so it was good to not get heckled so much during State of Origin.
Always important, no matter where you work.
Yeah, it hasn't been good this last decade, has it? Really? So,
No, it hasn't. You're right. You're right.
But so I went down to Stone & Wood. I was very fortunate to be able to, to be in there so early on, and I got to learn a lot about the beer business itself with the guys who started the business, the founders, who between them had, Brad Ross and Jamie had like 50-something years, I think, of Australian brewing experience between them. So that was really really attractive to me, and I thought it was important, to be able to go and work for and with guys like that, where I was able to learn not so much about the brewing side, because I was sort of already getting pretty good at that, but how the beer business actually works as well. How many other moving parts are to it. So
because it's not just the brewing side, of course. There's so much more to it.
there's the marketing and branding side of it, which is so important. There's the logistics side of it, so important. It's all good if I make great beer, but if we can't get it to anybody, what's the point?
Yeah, no one's drinking it.
Yeah.
And when you were with Stone and Wood and you went to a pub or you went to a bottle shop and you saw it, did you kind of pinch yourself and go, I'm part of that. That's mine.
I made that.
Yeah. Oh, definitely. The funny thing is now with Balter, people go, I saw your beer in Mexico, or I saw your beer in, people are sending me photos of people in Perth drinking it and all over the place, and I guess I'm so wrapped up and head down, bum up in getting this thing up and going with all my colleagues and that I probably don't stop and smell the roses enough. But I love that everyone else does. Everyone else
is appreciating your hard work.
Yeah.
Okay, so from Stone and Wood to where?
So I did Stone and Wood for 4 years, and then I went over to Byron Bay Brewing Company, and I spent 18 months there as head brewer there. And got to get back to more a sort of brew pub style environment for a while, and until the guys who were beginning to form Balter came calling. And
so, which one of the legends phoned you? Was it Mick Fanning? Was it Joel Parkinson? Was it B. Durbidge? Was it Josh Kerr? Or was it the silent partner that isn't a surfer or of note?
Yeah, it was actually a guy called Sean Ronan who lives in San Diego. He's one of Josh Kerr's neighbours, and they're sort of very good friends. So Sean was the four boys. This was basically Bede's idea. He wanted to start a brew pub or a brewery on Stradbroke, on Stratty, but the other boys talked him around and said, it's an island. You can't get stuff on or off very easily.
Yes.
It's a nice island, but it is. It takes a bit of a trip.
Yeah, the beer won't get off the island because everyone on Stratty is going to drink it.
The beer is in the North Stradbroke Hotel.
I know, it's awesome. I feel really proud for Bede about that, because his grandparents built the pub too, I think. So the original concept was Bede, and he got Mick and Joel and Josh and Sean involved, and it was like, well, we need to do this somewhere more realistic. So it turned out to be the Gold Coast. So Sean got in contact with me initially. So San Diego is pretty much the center of US craft brewing at the moment. It's the West Coast thing is pretty significant over there. San Diego County has like 100 breweries or something. Yeah, it's insane.
Wow.
And so to have this guy ringing from San Diego, FaceTime, and going, do you want to start a brewery?
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh, maybe. And I didn't know that the other guys are involved yet. And then it eventually got revealed that, it was Mick and Joel and the other guys. And I kind of groaned. But they know, they try and make out that I hated them, but I didn't.
You were aware
I just
of
was
who
very
they were.
wary. Yeah, I knew they were surfers, and I thought, that was too good to be true, wasn't it? So here's a bunch of guys who are going to want me to try and make a Corona knockoff or something.
That would have been your nightmare, right?
Yeah, no.
Wow.
And I thought, no, I've worked too hard to go and try and do something like just destroy a hard-won reputation, I suppose.
Yeah.
So it took a bit of convincing, but they're wrong. I never hated them. I was just like, didn't
You want to make sure everything was right.
I was
Protective.
Yeah, very protective of the industry as well, because if I'd have been the wrong person, I could have, they would have sold some beer anyway, and if it hadn't have been very good, or as a really cynical take on things, it could have actually just introduced a virus into this industry that I love so much, you know. So I've actually had a few of my peers who've said, we're really glad that it's you. We all as an industry owe you a pat on the back because you're the head brewer at Balter, not some, industrial brewer. Or,
cookie cutter type, yeah.
Because you literally started from scratch, didn't you? You walked into a shed that was full of cobwebs and they said, build us a brewery. Yeah.
And I mean, that's part of what sort of got me over the line was, ultimately, I think it was Mick said, mate, look, all we want is, do you want to come and build your dream brewery? Make the beer you want to make. We've heard you're the man, so we just want you to help us out and lead us into this.
And you rang your wife and said, can you believe what's just happening?
Yeah, well, I went home and told her that they'd offered me, to be part of Balter, and I sort of left it about a week before I got back in contact with them. And again, that's where my wife started to bully me, and she She wanted to punch the crap out of me, basically, going, "What are you doing? Why haven't you said yes to this?" And I guess, if anything, I'm sometimes a bit of a deep thinker, so I was just trying to plot out every possible outcome and and weigh it all up. I've been fortunate, I suppose. At the same time, I had 3 or 4 other offers to do things, so I feel very fortunate there that I didn't feel trapped in a corner. I had, it was almost the other, being damned by having too many offers or decisions to make. But at the end of the day, we got the right one. So, I mean, because we still live in Byron Bay, so it's a 45-minute drive every day. But, live in Byron, build a brewery in Currumbin. I don't try not to complain too much.
That's a tough life.
And part of the brewery is you've set up a bar. Like it's a very kind of, I suppose, traditional style tiled kind of bar setup.
Yeah. We've got a 12 tap room there. So part of my wish list, I suppose, when I was saying yes to Balter was, among other things, was to have a pilot system. It's a 500-litre pilot system. So I can make sort of 8 to 10 kegs at a time and have a tap room where we could display those beers as well. Because through my experience, obviously, with Stone and Wood, with a beer like Pacific Ale, it was such a Leviathan brand that quite often we didn't get to make much else because we had to spend so much time just keeping up with demand for that beer. So I was thinking, if the same thing happened with the Balter beers, at least I had the pilot system to be able to test new recipes, try new hops, try new yeasts, new techniques, come up with, the ideas for the next lot of beers and the seasonal releases and one-offs and all that sort of stuff. And that's really what sort of motivates me to get out of bed now is where's that next great beer. I like to think that a beer has to have a reason for being. You want to make a beer because there was something driving you to do that, Is it a new hop I want to try? Is it a burgundy coloured beer that looks like a 64 SG?
From Angus Young.
Or that sort of thing. I mean, the craft beer, for want of better words, thing has sort of fractured to that point now where in some cases it can be like a rod for our own backs, where just there's almost this demand for weirder and stranger beers day after day, and they eventually sort of turn in on themselves. And quite often I've tasted plenty of beers like that who have been awesome and really have pushed the boundaries and furthered the frontiers of beers, but then you get others that just should never have been brewed in the first place. And I've done a few of those.
You know what I mean? Beer, for a lot of people, it's like a song. When you hear that song and you go, I remember when I first heard that song.
Yeah.
For me, when I first tasted XPA, I go straight back to my back deck with my cousin a couple of years ago when I first tasted it, and he said, "You got to try this." And I go straight back to that afternoon, and it was a long afternoon.
Awesome.
Yeah, you immediately go straight back to it. It's a weird thing, but it just has that effect on people.
It's obviously you're attributing great memories to it.
Great memories.
And that's great. I mean, I had one earlier this year too. Cricketers, Keeper's Arms. Just the smell brought me back to being 22 and hanging out with mates. Well, I wasn't drinking that beer back when I was 22, but just that smell of that particular beer just suddenly gave me a flashback. And I went, cool, I'm 22 again. That's 15 years ago now. So that's been some time. But that's an incredible effect that it can have.
Oh, absolutely. And your sense of smell is central to, to all of that. It does evoke memories. And I read something the other day. There's something like 1,000 genes in the human genome attributed to your sense of smell, to your olfactory system all over. But there's only about 4 attributed to sight, to vision.
Really?
So, it's incredible just how deeply embedded in your brain your sense of smell is. And of course, taste is a combination of aroma and, flavour is a combination of aroma and taste and mouthfeel. And it's no surprise. I mean, I still do too, you try different beers and they just take you back.
Scott, we've been talking about beer for quite a while, but you've got how many different kinds of beers now that Balter put out?
At the moment, we've got a core range of 4.
Yep.
The XPA, Pilsner, IPA, and Alt Brown.
Yep.
And we do seasonal releases. We did one earlier in the year called Black Metal Disco.
I love that name.
Which is a stout. So I bought a 4-pack for you.
I love that name. Yeah.
So, and next year, I've got a whole roster of seasonals and, a couple of one-offs and also some collaborations where we're very, very fortunate that we're Australia's champion medium-sized brewery at the AIBA Awards last year. And champion small brewery was Green Beacon, the boys up in Brisbane.
Wayfarer?
Yep. Johan and the crew up at Green Beacon are the champion small brewery, we're champion medium brewery, and Stone & Wood is champion large brewery. So part of winning that this year at the Australian International Beer Awards is we all get together sort of probably February, March next year and collaborate and make a champions beer. So it's pretty cool that we're all fairly local.
The brew of the brewmasters.
When does that come out? And how do we find out
probably
about it?
for May. It'll be ready for the next lot of beer awards.
And what's it going to be called, and how do we find out about it?
No, I'd say all of the breweries will probably, on our social media, but also the Good Beer Week and Australian International Beer Awards. Yeah. The beer media would cover it. Yeah,
absolutely. You've tasted plenty of beers in your lifetime. Can you remember the worst?
There's been a few, and I've probably brewed most of them.
I see. That's the self-deprecation.
I was going to say that's really nice.
I have made a couple of shockers in my time, but that's the whole thing. I've got a garage at home where I've still got a 50-litre home brew system that's actually cobbled together out of a Gatorade container.
I like the ones that they use in the NFL.
Yeah, the big round ones. Yeah. So it's that, and also I boil the beer up and make the beer in an old 1940s or 1950s Mally's wash copper, like Granny used to use. So it used to be a joke. I used to, when I was at Stone & Wood, I'd make a bunch of beer at home for our Christmas parties, and I'd put it in my 20-litre corny kegs. And put it in one of the big yellow-lidded recycle bins and about 6 bags of ice, and away we went. Because we've been making Pacific Ale all year. We didn't necessarily want to drink it, but the joke was always Stone & Wood Christmas party beer is made in a washing machine, served out of a garbage bin.
And the thing I love as well, I mean, we do live on the Gold Coast. We're lucky enough to be near the brewery. But you guys, behind the bar, sometimes Mick and Joel will pop up and you yourself will start pouring the beers. So,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Beer is of the people, by the people, for the people, it should be. So, when the boys, they're all over at, they're all overseas in Hawaii at the moment. Probably the last time Beadle surf over there. When they're back in town, the boys are popping in usually. Obviously, they want to drink some beer, but
for sure.
Not just to say hi.
They'll get in and give us a hand and help out. So,
are you surprised with the growth? Because it has gone pretty ballistic, hasn't it?
Yes. When I first got to sit down and design the brewery, it was like, what sort of size brew house are we going to have, and how much beer can we make a year? And even again, part of the reason I wanted that pilot system was because I thought, wow, this brew house is just going to be huge. We're going to be making an enormous amount of beer, and I hope we're not sitting on it too long, that we've got the ability to make a lot of beer and not sell it. But I was wrong almost immediately with that, which is great, so it's kind of good to, to have our supply chains are nice and short, so we don't have beer sitting around very long. And particularly this time of year, we're making as much as we can, and there's almost nothing in the cold room every day. Because it's going straight out onto trucks and straight out into out into the trade, and then hopefully straight home to people's fridges or off to their favourite pub or whatever. So it does blow my mind, like living in Byron, to know that the beer's on at all the pubs in Byron and has been for a while. The Brunswick Hotel, going further north, so many, lots of places up here as well. Right through Brisbane, Melbourne's always been really good. Sydney, Adelaide, Perth.
It's just gone off.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to Melbourne over Christmas, and I looked on the map. Where can I get it? I went onto on the website. So just on the way down to where I'm going, there's a spot there. I'll pop in.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. No, Melbourne's been very, very kind to us. They like what we do down there, so that's great.
We started off by learning your journey, Scott, and the fact that you went to this amazing course. Came highly recommended. You started picking the brains of everyone involved. Flash forward to now, are you the guy that people are picking the brains of?
Yeah, that happens a bit. I feel usually very sort of humbled and flattered that people care enough about my opinions to ring up other great professional brewers. Will do that. So that's the fraternal beauty of good beer, I suppose, in Australia at our level. We're not throwing brickbats at each other. We're helping each other out. We have a common enemy, which is basically indifference or unawareness of all these great Australian brewers who are punching out, in a lot of cases, world-class beer.
What about concreting advice? You still getting any calls for that? Or?
Do you know, it only stopped 4 or 5 years ago where I'd get phone calls going, "Oh, hello, Scotty, you did my driveway about 12 years ago, and my sister-in-law wants a house slab done. Do you reckon you can?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sorry, I brew beer and I live in Byron Bay now."
It must sound good to be able to say that.
Good for you, jerk.
Well, Scott Hargraves, the chief brewer of Balter Brewery, based on the Gold Coast here. Thank you. And who the hell is Scott Hargraves, Al? We now know.
Oh, and what a journey it's been to.
Yeah, thanks for coming in, Scott. And
No worries. Thanks, fellas.
all the best for Christmas.
Yeah, you too. Have a good one.